Good morning, traders. Paul here with GammaEdge. Today is Tuesday, the 18th of April. Let's get started. Pause your players here. Read to the very bottom. Important to you, important to us. If you agree, hit that play button. Summary for today. We are kind of at a crossroads. I know the markets are going up, but it's not a broad indication across the board. So when you get out over your ski tips, we got to be careful. Right now, the market models are short-term short or indeterminate. Just be aware of that. We are mindful of reversals and whipsaws. The long-term market model is still bearish. We do have the ARCX, which is the New York Stock Exchange, the NASDAQ, and the Amex all into one. It is the cumulative tick, is above the ribbon. This is longer term bullish, but nothing else. The USC, which is the US Composite, the S&P 500, the Qs, and the Russell 2000 are all in various states of a downtrend. So we are rallying in a limited sense with an overall broader downtrend, and you should take that into consideration as you trade. Your time frames should be shorter, longer trades should be brought in, and you should not get out over the ski tips in terms of exposure. While we're loath to state the following, want everyone to see what we're seeing, and we'll talk a little bit about this at the end. 4200 SPX is experiencing the setup that we feel is necessary for a gamma squeeze, and you'll see that at the end of the presentation. Market breadth is viewed by the 52-week new high, new lows. Had the new lows still outpacing the new highs. We had 220 down, 150 up. This is still bearish. I know we're grinding around here, but it's not a broad participation. That should give you some pause at exposing capital. Do not get out over your ski tips, as I just said. The 0DTE folks, we have a lot of them in the Discord. This should say, sorry about this, this should say 4135 is the dominant downside sensitive strike. If we move below us, expect a push down to 4110. We are looking today and tomorrow at 4175 as the near upside target. This is where the primary sensitivity exists for today. If we do move above that 4175, we could become trapped between 4175 and 4200. The reason for this is that charm flows now start to counterbalance, and so instead of having the wind in our sails, we start swirling around a little bit. It all depends on what the 0DTE action is today, and we would urge everyone to use the value command within the Discord to keep track of what strikes are being pounded. 4140 downside limit. We don't think we're going to go much below that today, so this 4135, 4140 seems to be the real key here. A drop below this opens the door to 4125 and then points south to 4075. We have no expectation of going down there. We're in too strong of an upward trend right now, just due to all the calls that are being opened. But if we do move down into this area and lose 4100, of course, then that 4075 becomes very real and will grow very quickly, and we'll start selling our long deltas and adding short deltas. Taking a look at the market model via the cumulative tick, this is a composite view. So this is what we call the ribbon. You can see with the ARCX, that's what this is right here, the tick RC. We are more or less horizontal in yesterday's action, so indeterminate. We are above the ribbon, which is bullish. We could go up or we could go down. This is not predictive, and we don't want folks to look at it as a predictive tool. This stated, we did get a turnoff of the downward sloping, what we call railroad track pattern, and you can see that if the cumulative tick line continues up, then we will get a crossing and a confirmation to move up. This is actually a pullback within a longer bullish phase. This is healthy, this is good, this is a buying opportunity if we continue up, and so we will be looking to increase our long exposure for the short term if this does continue upward. Taking a look at the ES, nothing really much to report relative to yesterday. The ES market is relatively static in the overall distribution of options. We'll note that we are getting a slight bouncing. We moved up from 45.10 to 45.30, and I've got the rationale, what happens when that occurs. But just be aware, everything else is static, and this is pretty much business as usual. Looking at possible 418 entries, TXN has now moved up. It was yesterday in the 0 gex to plus trans. It's now moved up in the plus trans to plus gex area. Apple's in this category, and JPM is in this category. I want everyone to be aware of that. Although we do have XRT and IWM showing up as a gex ratio candidates, these have been in this position for a while. IWM is just being pounded into the ground. So it's just put dominated. We're not seeing any improvement in the gex ratio. So with no advancement, we are ignoring both of these. XLK is showing up now on the 0 to P trans move. Taking a look at the gamma across the SPX, this is the PM structure. We separate the PM and the AMs. A couple things stand out. 4200, of course, it is a dominant strike in terms of the call open interest, which is here, and also plus gex. You can see that here. Now your eye will see this up here. 4320 is the end of month June. It's the end of the quarter. These are short calls that are sitting up here. We've adjusted those into the overall complex. They are not netted out, which is why we artificially have these as a negative number right now. There is some net there across the structure, but obviously not enough to compensate it. That's why this is coming up as the net negative dominant strike. That being said, these are not liquid, and we do not put a lot of attention into those. Therefore, where do we look at? So if you look right here, this 4803, compare it, you can see that is the next largest number. So 4050, which just happens to be the same value as yesterday, we're taking that as the downside structure for minus gex. That means that we're most likely range bound between these two strikes, 4050 and 4200, for the reasons I just said. The magnitude here at 4200 is huge. This is a very, very large amount of gamma that sits there, so just be aware of that. Want to point out that relative to yesterday, we nearly doubled. And so this just shows a tremendous amount of short-dated long calls going in. We have looked for the short calls. We've compensated for those overnight. And the bottom line is we still have a huge amount of long calls going in by our methods. So just all that being aware of that. 4115, 4140 in the SPX PM complex. This will be your danger zone, and below that, think about that. We've got very, very strong call dominance in the money below us, out of the money above us, and all roads for today at least point positive. 0 DTE, this is what expires today. A very, very large amount and heavily imbalanced. We actually could see some downward pressure for today, so just be aware that when you have this amount of long calls that are coming off the table, when we close long calls, it typically puts some downward pressure in the market. So we'll have to watch the value command and just see what is being pounded today and see if that is an offsetting thing. As we open calls above and as these get closed, it's going to be a battle going on back and forth today. 4135, 4175 are the levels. We're at the yellow line right now. When you watch the value command, watch for 4200 both today going in as well as tomorrow and for the balance of the overall week. Taking a look at tomorrow, which is going to be Wednesday. This is our view, crystal ball view into tomorrow. Again, 4200, very, very strong. 4175 is the dominant level for tomorrow. So just be aware of that. But we have most of the calls coming off at the 4200 strike, but very close at 4175. Again, watch for a replacement at these levels. And you can see how tomorrow's distribution is really going to impact the overall ranges that we could see. We'll note we're a little bit higher, so we are seeing some folks start to push a little bit higher, 4205, 4210. This gamma, as we move up here, will continue to grow, and that will embolden people to start pushing upward. They're going to have to really move the 4215 line, though, in order to for us to break through and be able to go much higher in that. So we'll be mindful and watchful of that. Taking a look at the balance of the week here, we turn on all the expires for the week. We just want to see what the distribution of things are. 4,200, 4,130 really become the goalpost for the week. This is an extremely large number. It's about 1.5 times larger than yesterday. And remember, we have already taken off Monday's expiry in this. So this has grown a dramatic amount. Again, we've adjusted for short calls. And frankly, there aren't a lot of shorts that are going in. I would not, we had a question in the Discord yesterday, and I would not presume that these are all short calls going in. They are not. By our eye and by our data, this is a lot of speculation is coming into the table. So 41.95, 4,200, most likely the upside for the balance of the week, 41.30 to the downside. We are mindful of the development of starting to see some nodes develop within the week. These will expire this week too. So if we do have weakness, we would not be surprised at it. The transition range is being absorbed as we move lower. Just be mindful of that. That could be a topping formation. Maybe it's not. Just pay attention and see what happens. Taking a look at the combo complex. This is the AM and the PMs all combined. Actually, a very clean presentation. I don't have to say too much about this. Your eye knows what to look for. 4,200 upside, just a huge amount in the overall 4,200 line. You can see 4,250, and then the quarter levels also here. 43 is already starting to grow. Very significant amount up here, despite the in-the-money puts that are already up here. These calls are just growing dramatically, which potentially could pull us upward. You can see out of the money calls dominant here, in the money calls dominant below us. Transition is starting to get a little bit fatter, so just want everyone to be aware of that. This as these deltas get less and less, we could see some of the sand underneath our feet eroding as time goes forward. This last slide, I wanted to talk a little bit about that gamma squeeze potential that we're seeing here. First of all, it's Tuesday. Tuesdays are not normally strong days, independent of it being expiry week or not. It doesn't really matter. What's key here is that this magnitude at the 4,200 line is remarkable. This is notable. This is not common. Typically what we see in a distribution, and you can see it almost here, you get, there's a distribution of strikes, and this is just due because this is the most liquid market. And although it's not normal or bell-shaped, it tends to follow a normal. If I were to plot this on a log scale, you would actually see, and flip this to a positive, you would actually see a form on the right-hand side of this being kind of bell curve shaped. Well, it's not. And so this linear line here shows where we would normally expect to be. And the fact that we're so much above this right now, it just shows you what the market is doing. They're really pounding the heck out of the 4,200. And when we open up this level here, when we keep pounding calls, long calls at this level, what we're effectively doing as we move up, the dealers are getting shorter, because as we get the spread between spot price and a fixed strike above us, as the spread gets narrower and narrower, the deltas on our side of the table go up. When the deltas go up on our side of the table, we're getting longer and the dealers are getting shorter. So as a corresponding reflexive response, we presume the dealers must buy the futures or the correlated underlines. Think, the biggest stock positions that are within the index. And so what happens is that causes us to grind further up, and that will continue. So if we continue to see a growth of the 4,200 line, this is effectively the setup for a gamma squeeze. It's where we just are being pulled upward and not respective of gamma, of charm, or respective of Vanna. We're effectively just being pulled up, and as price gets pulled up, it just becomes one begats the other. Now, once we get above 4,200, charm flows flip, gamma influences flip, and what the dealers have to do. So that becomes why we could pin around 4,200. So just be aware of that. So we'll be watching the magnitudes. We'll also be watching just to see what happens here. It's pretty clear the structure down below us is very, very weak relative to what we have above us, right? So you could say, well, Paul, gamma is, spot price dependent. That's why all these are much lower. Absolutely true. But I would just offer this. we're still sitting down here and look at the distribution up here compared to the distribution down here, right? So there is a general lack of fear right now. We're not buying downside protection, at least not right at this moment. And just want everyone to be aware of some of the things that are going on here. We are starting to see, by the way, positive gamma appear down here. And this is from the short puts going in, which is actually driving part of the conversation down here. So it's kind of interesting to see how the entire transition range is moving up. So that's a lot of words to say. Be mindful of 4,200. Be mindful of these transition zones and areas. Of course, 4075 and below is problematic. The area in between 4140 and 4075 is messy, noisy, choppy, indeterminate, and coming from where we are, generally we would see the bears get emboldened, and possibly would see a growth as they start opening their puts and potentially pulling us down. So that's it for today. If you have any questions or comments, come on into the Discord. GammaEdge.us gets you there. Upper right-hand corner is a pricing tab. Click on that, fill out the blanks, choose your plan. Come on in for a 14-day free trial. All the tools turned on. Great group of traders, very active in voice, calling out what we see. It's actually a fun place. Twitter, follow us on GammaEdges with an S, and then on YouTube, two things. If you like today's content, want you to hit that like button, thumbs up, smash it. Let me know that I'm providing content that you find useful. And then, of course, subscribe, because Taylor and I are posting videos and we want you to see what we're seeing. So with that, I bid you farewell. Hope to see you in the Discord, and have a great day. Thanks.